The
Hi.
broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hey Ryan, how you doing this evening?
Doing well, my friend. How's the weather in Florida?
It's the beautiful time of the year here. Christmas to May in Florida, where I live, is the best time. It's the 70s and milder. It's fantastic. I know you're out in California still today, I assume.
Yes, sir. But we've been getting a little bit of rain out here. It's a good thing for us, that's
Oh,
for sure.
well, great.
Kind of cooling off, but you never know. Christmas could be 70. Sorry for all of you who are elsewhere and freezing.
Guess we're just rubbing it in. But anyway, we've got a lot to talk about. I want to welcome and thank Ryan Jovenbach from SleepTest.com, one of our good friends, our partners. We work with you daily in our practices, and I've been excited about this for quite a few weeks because I know you always have a lot of great things to add. Thank you, everyone. I know it's a busy time of the year for taking your evening out. We've got several hundred people signed up tonight, so we'll do a little housekeeping in a bit. But if you have questions, we have to mute everybody because of the number of people, but we will get to your questions. Type them in the question box. And, I'm going to act as the moderator here mostly, just let Ryan do his stuff. I'm Dr. Guy Yatros, as a lot of you probably know, but if not, I'm from Dental Sleep Solutions in DS3, and this is all we do is help people who want to get sleep into their practices, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So, Ryan Javenbach, what is your founder, president, to what sleeptest.com? Welcome and
Just another guy. Like you said, I think what stood out to me most was the fact that your main intention is helping people. And I think it's a beautiful thing that not only you and I, but everybody on this webinar has an opportunity to help people.
right.
And they're people before they become patients. And I think that's something we have to think about, because as people, we're crazy, the things we do or the things we don't do. And no, I'm honored to be here, Guy. Thank you to you and your team. But also, thanks everybody for being here. I know there are plenty of other things you can be doing right now, but I hope and pray that you get some value out of this. And I also want to invite anybody. You'll get both of our contact information at the end, but please don't hesitate to reach out if you want to take a deeper dive into any of this topic. I know Guy does that for hundreds, thousands of practices all over the country. Believe it or not, I try to do the same. So not easy to keep up with a Guy, but hopefully we can reach the masses tonight. So thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.
So let's dive in, shall we, Guy? Sound
Absolutely.
good? All right. So what's the scoop in dentistry and home sleep testing? And so when Guy reached out and asked me to share a little bit of this, not only but facts and a lot of opinions, let's dive in and kind of understand that whole process. But from my perspective, as many of you know, full disclosure, I'm not a doctor. My background's in psychology and human behavior. And at any rate, I think it's really important that anytime we start any topic with regards to healthcare, we take a second to get grounded. And I think, at least for me, Guy, and potentially even for you and some of the conversations we had earlier today, I think people forget how impactful we can be in our roles. Doesn't matter if you're an assistant, a hygienist, if you are the doctor, or guys like ourselves or the folks that are on our teams. And I think we forget how big of a problem sleep health and airway is in our country. And it wasn't until 2015 that the CDC physically said that sleep is an epidemic, and sleep apnea to be specific. And for those of you guys who have seen myself or potentially even Guy speak before, just to share a couple of slides and think about one or two patients in your practice that either fell asleep in your chair or got in a recent car accident, whatever it might be. We've got over 300 million people in the U.S., and what the CDC is telling us that there's over 108 million people, forgive me, that don't sleep well. And some people think it's cool to get less amount of sleep. Some people struggle with just sleep awareness, sleep behavior, or sleep hygiene, some people call it. But whether or not these patients have sleep-related breathing disorder, there's something going on, and the insufficient sleep, regardless of how you look at it, rejuvenating the body, is really important. And I think many of you guys have potentially even heard about these risk factors or comorbidities of obstructive sleep apnea. But I always encourage people, when we look at this broad spectrum of comorbidities, and some of you all have heard me talk about the problem, consequence, and tie in the comorbidities before you get into their chief concern. But I also think it's really important to pick one or two of these stats, whether for you there's something that resonates with regards to congestive heart failure or daytime sleepiness or whatever it is. And I encourage everybody between doctor and team members to have one or two stats, but then lead into a story that could potentially even make you think about this study. And no disrespect whatsoever to the physician community, because I think we all need them in order to take a collaborative approach. But there is research that shows patients will go symptomatic with sleep apnea for 5.2 years before a physician could potentially bring up sleep to that patient. And if you just take a second to do the math on this, the math on something at 5.2 years with just a mild sleep apneic patient, and I say just mild to just be funny, because I'm a mild sleep apneic patient, and if I don't wear my appliance, I don't feel well rested. My wife wants to choke me, or what's even worse, I wake up and she's on the couch downstairs. Is probably the biggest pain point. But I encourage people to think about, when you think about just 10 events, or for me, it's 7 events per hour. Do the math on that. If I were to sleep 7 hours, sure we want 7, 8, depending on what that is. But by 365 days, 5.2 years from that study we just talked about, that's over 130 apneic patients for that for that specific patient who's been walking into your office for the last 5 years, or maybe 10 years. And if you go even deeper on that, let's call it what it is, with a patient with 30 events per hour.
Wow.
Almost 400 apneic events in the last 5.2 years. But yet, if you talk to some other people, I'm sure they have potentially gone longer than that. Guy, have you ever, caught up with some patients who said, yeah, I felt like this for 5 years, 10 years, who knows how long?
All the time. We just did a test on my niece's husband, and he's felt this way. He said his whole adult life. He's only late 20s, and so he's been 7, 8 years, and he does have apnea. It's not real severe, but I do believe it's why he feels bad. We're getting ready to treat him. It happens all the time, and you'll see patients that even after they find out they have this, they're not successfully treating it. So, how many more years do they go before they actually find a dentist who knows how to help them? And I'm interested in that. This is going to make my wife not want to choke me aspect. I wear my device and she still wants to choke me.
It's a real thing.
Okay, but
yeah, well, there are many reasons why they might want to do that.
Okay,
but,
this only solves one. I want to be clear on that for the disclaimer.
It solves one where I can actually sleep next to her. So I've tried many appliances. If anybody wants to try those, talk to me about them offline. I'm happy to share. But here's the point. Your patients, they need your help.
Absolutely.
And again, we all believe in collaborative care, but the dentist is really in a great position. And that's why when we launched what we do in the dental space, because you guys are in the oral cavity. You guys are there twice a year at minimum, hopefully. You have a better rapport with your patients than any other physician, clinician, you name it. And I've worked with a lot of them. And so, going back to the thought that, hey, we've got these patients with the problem, but are we doing anything about it? And now, thank goodness, we've got some support from the ADA that Guy and Steve Carsonson and everybody else is talking about, which is fantastic how you all are getting involved. But, straight to the point, here it is. Dentists can do and play a large part of this multidisciplinary approach. We're now encouraged, you are now being encouraged to screen patients with sleep-related breathing disorders. And of course, okay, sure, we know that patients should be referred to the appropriate physicians for proper diagnosis. No problem. We're going to talk about multiple different avenues and how you can take that approach. But also knowing that you guys are the only ones with the absolute knowledge and expertise when it comes to oral appliance therapy. But I think the biggest challenge is, for one, upfront, patient awareness. They don't know what an airway is. they're not bleeding and in pain like they call you on Monday morning and they've got to get in your office first thing that day. And then here we are talking about sleep apnea or sleep health, and they're all over the place. But I think there's something to be said about, sort of a pre-touch to them even coming in. We all should be broadcasting it, whether it's email blasting, just some marketing around what you guys are doing to say, hey, look, expect to be physically screened for sleep-related breathing disorders when you come into our practice. So that way, when they come into your practice, they're not wondering why this is happening. Have you done any of that yourself, Guy, with regards to getting that out to the local public?
Well, yeah, I
know you've been doing this a long time.
When I talk to the dentists, when we do lectures for the Kiwanis Club, things like that, you bring this up. And one thing analogy, and I don't want to take too much of your time here, but when I first got out of dental school 30 years ago, it wasn't as common as it is now. A lot of patients weren't never been probed before. You had to come in and go, "What are you doing? You're sticking with this probe. I've never had that done before." And we had to sit down and explain to them that this is our job and why we're doing it. And that slide you had up from the ADA has been one of the most helpful things for our company, for our mission of getting dentists to do this, because now we can say, it's your job to do this. The American Dental Association says we should be screening our patients. And if you're not having these discussions, which aren't always easy, you're not doing your job. And it just as if you're not probing. So that only came out a little over 2 years ago. So, I mean, this is something that every dentist hasn't embraced, but, hopefully it won't take 30 years before it becomes commonplace. Hopefully, with all of our efforts, it can get to where everyone's doing this. And I know we spent a little bit of time on this, Ryan, but the testing is the easy part, I think, in some ways, getting the dentist and the patients and everybody on board to understand how important this is and getting them to say yes to the sleep test. That's probably a bigger challenge than the test itself in today's world.
Yeah. Well, it all has to do with patient perception, in my belief, and then their behavior. Right. I'll share this article with anybody who wants it, but there was a recent article I read where patients would rather die than change. And right. Think about some of your bad habits as we age. I think the biggest challenge that we're all up against as well is, okay, I can get the patient to say yes, and I've got them convinced to take the sleep test, but if I don't have the proper assets with regards to where to go with that next step, just got off the phone with a doctor before you and I got on this webinar, Guy, and it is a challenge, and I'm not making this stuff up, and I will say it over and over again. I mean no disrespect to this community, and I know the AASM is trying to do something about it, but this study is from the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine just last year. I know it only goes to 2015, but if you kind of look across the country and think about where you are in this space, Texas, California, bigger states, so maybe greater population, I don't know. I can tell you full transparency with regards to my own wife. We have diagnosed her with UARS. She's tiny, petite. She's your classic standard UARS patient who works out every day of her life, but it's a lot going on beyond that with regards to changes in thyroid, hormone, et cetera. And we try to get her in to see a sleep physician. I live right in the middle of the hustle and bustle of Southern California, and it was a 3-month wait. And she said, well, why don't I just put that off for now? I hope she never watches this, but I'll put it off for now because first I'm going to do the Invisalign, unravel the malocclusion, tip open the molars, and then I'll get into a device, and then I'll go see the physician because it takes too long to get in. And that's, again, you guys all know sometimes family members are the hardest to treat, the hardest to test, or gosh, the hardest to even get them to understand where we're coming from. And so I don't want you to take my opinion on it. I'm a factual guy after being in vascular surgery for years. Surgeons wouldn't talk to you unless your data was better than the competition. And so this lays it out there from 2018. Again, good patient pool, 1,000 patients in this study. 56% of them were at risk for sleep apnea, but only 8% of them moved forward with the home sleep test. And of course, from there, 94% of them were diagnosed with sleep apnea. And the sad moral of the story here is that basically these patients are just rarely tested. I can't tell you why exactly in this case. I can tell you looking at numbers and trends with regards to what we do at sleeptest.com, you can see why patients decline testing. We start to measure and monitor those, and it's either an awareness and education thing at the screening phase, or the lack of ability to build urgency with comorbidities and really consequences. But also beyond that is this patient behavior. You know, what was the option for those patients to get a sleep test in that study?
Right.
And why didn't they move forward? So as many of you guys have heard me speak about before, this is what Guy said. We're on a mission. And this is something near and dear to my heart. My father doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, non-obese, non-diabetic, worked out every day of his life. Open heart surgery at 55 years old. The day after I got my wisdom teeth pulled, I had to rush him to the hospital. They did a quadruple bypass the next day, multiple angioplasties, 4 stents placed, and I used to be a part of an organization that manufactured the best stents in the world. They're only good for about 7 years, and he's had a couple that have been in there for 10. And so after his 4th stent was placed, they finally decided to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and move forward with the sleep test. I think there could be something here. He ended up going into the hospital, spent $1,100 on his sleep test. He's been on CPAP, where he sleeps right here down the hall from my mom. I always say it's either the dogs get in the way or the CPAP, but he still just had a stroke 9 months ago. He's okay. For those of you guys who get concerned, he's back to work at 75 years old. But this is what's happening to patients as we talk about. Was it 5.2 years? Is it 10.3 years? I don't know, Guy. But this is where I think before we get into sleep testing, we need to think about where are we coming from. I heard you say mission, and I really like that. It has to be part of your core, whether it's the core values or your mission statement to your practice to really get this to the next level.
Did I hear you say he went through all that before anybody mentioned the sleep test?
That's correct. It was after the 4th stent, so quadruple bypass, multiple angioplasties, and 4 stents.
And that's just not uncommon. I know we spent a little bit of time on this, but it's important. That's what we're trying to solve. There's some questions coming in, so keep the questions coming in the question box. We're going to get to all of them before it's over with. So I promise you that. We'll get to them at the end if we don't get to them in the middle of this. But, you know, one of the questions that's up there is, you know, they always send people to the CPAP first, and this medical community. We've got to educate the medical community, too. It's part of our job. It shouldn't be that he had to go through all that before someone's bright light went off that, hey, he could have apnea. Anyway, we're going to move on. I just want a couple of quick announcements. Again, I see people are typing things into the question box. Please do that. We have over 100 people on here, I think, tonight, so we can't open up the mics, but we will get to all your questions, I promise. You will get CE for this. It'll come to the email that you got the registration to. If you don't see it within the next couple of days, which it'll get there much quicker than that, typically, check our spam box. If you don't find it, then let us know. You can move on there. Ryan, next slide.
You got it, my friend.
We'll talk a little bit more at the end. I don't want to take too much of anyone's time, but I see some questions coming in about billing and other things. That's what we do at Dental Sleep Solutions. We have a whole team of people. I had the president of Pankey come by and visit me today, and he was just like, wow, all these people come here just to help dentists with dental sleep. He was really impressed that there was such a need, and we had such an organization, just a room, a pretty big facility, that we have a whole team of people that come in to help with education, coaching, software, and support. If you have more questions that we don't answer tonight and you just want some quick answers, just type in consultation. We'll get on the phone and answer your questions for you. We'll give you some free advice and also talk about what we do. If you want to know more about what we do, then just type in consultation. Ryan, you're speaking. I see your pretty face down here, much prettier than mine. At the North American.
You sound surprised. Wait a second.
Well, no, I'm not surprised. I'm old and I've been doing this a long time. It causes you to age, I guess, maybe. But you've come to this last few years. It's a second biggest dental sleep meeting in the country. We put it on really as a service to the sleep community to try to get some really good practical CE. So if you want to come, it's very reasonable, $600, and the rooms are, as they last, $270-ish, I think. And you have had a good experience there. What are you talking about in particular? I guess sleep testing of some sort, or what?
Totally secret. I can't tell you yet.
Okay, fantastic.
No, first of all, thank you. Well, let me say this. This is, in my opinion, the best sleep event all year. Look at the lineup. You've got Aaron Elliott. You've got Dr. Guy Yatros in front of you. You got Mark Murphy, Randy Curran. I mean, Rich Drake, everybody. And what I love about it, and I say it every time, it's a no BS event. It's all well taken care of, but the educators bring education that's real, that's hands-on, and you all let them say what they want to say, which I think gets a little bit discouraged or curbed every once in a while in other events. Guy, I know you're doing some of these other events all over the country between you and Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it looks like you have a course every week, huh?
Yeah, and these are 2-day courses in the afternoon on Saturday. You get a sleep monitoring one night. We do some hands-on. It's the most practical course in dental sleep medicine you'll come to. We call it our GPS because we guide you through the obstacles. We draw a roadmap for success. It's normally $12.95 for a dentist and a team member, and for attending this webinar, if you just type in course, you don't have to say which one necessarily. If you know which one, put which one. Before the webinar is over, you get $300 off. So if you're even thinking about coming, type in course and you get that. And there's how you get a hold of us. We'll put that up at the end as well. So let's move on. We got the housekeeping taken care of, and let's dive into more about HST and testing.
Yeah. So I did, and forgive me all, but I asked Guy if I could talk a little bit more about what's new. He said what's new in this space, and what I'm seeing a lot of is some great screening tools. As we just said, a lot of this starts with the screening, the awareness, and the education. As many of you guys know, we got to start here because I think this is currently the best in practice dental sleep screener where you can physically almost allow not only here's what works. It allows your team to have a workflow, but also shows that risk right there in front of the patient. So I'm a big advocate of this. We have a lot of folks who use our system and also use the screener. Some of them use other forms. I got to tell you, the folks who use this, it seems like their conversion rate is a bit higher with regards to the patients who are referred in for an HST and those who actually complete it. So when you have these kinds of tools, use them as much as you can in the office. But I've had the wonderful privilege to work with the folks over at Resonea recently, having conversations about their Drowsal app. And I'll tell you, this is going to be really cool, friends. I see this working for a lot of patients who are saying, no, I won't do a sleep test, or no, I don't believe what you're telling me about my oral cavity. This is all done on a cell phone, and the app itself is now FDA cleared to screen for OSA. And what's different about it, I think if you take it to the next level, we're talking about behavior. And we all know, number one, we're tied to our cell phones day in, day out. But this is about changing the patient's understanding, but also of sleep, but also their behavior toward how they sleep. So where I see this fitting in potentially in our organization in the near future is the patients that you all send us but decline testing. Get this out to them, get them educated, have them understand it and take that next step. Or patients who disappear from you in your practices, again, great long-term and follow-up, because even if we get the patient to say yes to the sleep test, yes to therapy, but how often do we get them in for titration? And so thanks to Nancy Rostein, awesome information in there on Sleep Well, Live Well program. But again, Karen Underwood, Tim out there as well. So, some great folks behind this that are doing some amazing things. The other thing I would say, because I've got to lead with this, because nothing happens with testing until we effectively build the urgency and get that patient to move forward. This is, anybody out there can use this tool on our website. You don't have to be a user, a member, doesn't matter to me. It's complimentary. Our mission was simply to build awareness here. Directly on our website, you have the opportunity to physically point on different pieces of comorbidities. You can physically teach patients about a home sleep test and let them watch a video. Again, so it's right there on the website. You don't have to pay for it. Do whatever you want to get patients educated. That's sort of our mission with all of that. So whether you're using this, you're using the DS3 screener, you're using an Epworth, whatever it might be, I think you asked me earlier, Guy, what am I going to be presenting on at the AADSM? A lot of it's going to be on self-awareness, not only for you, but as the doctor, but also the patients. And it will also be about what customers crave. And again, in my opinion, the best sleep test for anybody is the one they're going to do within 48 hours or this week,
Right.
or something that's efficient and affordable. So I come to the table here very open-minded. I come to this table very, very much from a consultative approach. I really don't care what you do, as long as you do something.
Right.
So at any rate, with regards to our options, and I will tell you, maybe some of you guys have heard Guy speak about this, myself speak about this, I'm all for giving the patient both options. Why not give them two options? Let them choose one of the decisions so they have some buy-in to the next steps. And I'm a big believer in PSG. It has saved my father's life. Also, obviously, a big believer in HST. So again, we may say it's a more detailed study with the PSG, but potentially a less accurate night's sleep, depending on how they hook you up, how they are physically going through the process of waking you up and doing different parts of studies throughout the night. And then with HST or HSAT, whichever you all want to call it for now. But sure, it might be a less detailed study, but it's a more accurate night's sleep next to my spouse, next to my bed partner, next to the dog for all I care. But let's hang out on PSG for a little bit, because I think personally, even in my position, I think you all should have assets in every one of these spaces. I believe sleep testing is not a one-size-fits-all scenario, just like your oral appliances are not a one-size-fits-all scenario. Every patient is dynamic, so let's pay attention to that. So, if you're looking at the patient who you need to measure muscle, heart, everything else that comes along with restless leg syndrome, boom, PSG. And we're going to get a lot more from a physiological perspective, both visually and electronically. And at the end of the day, they're going to come back with similar or same or more raw data that is going to be physically reviewed and interpreted by a board certified sleep physician. No matter what testing model you're using, make sure you've got that blessing of a true live board certified sleep physician who has read and interpreted that data. And again, I don't want anybody to take my opinions on these things, so I share data. Here's a great study, again, just from last year, talking about home sleep testing, and it's similarly effective to PSG with a substantial lower cost. And I can't tell you how many people, find us and just order a test online, never have gone to their dentist or physician. And if you work with our friend Mark Fowler, I'll tell you, the amount of times a patient Googles, or a person Googles sleep apnea or sleep apnea treatment is, respectfully, in my opinion here, far more times than they're asking their dentist or physician about it when they're in the chair. But if we can do something that's, more affordable and simply efficient, I think we've got something here. And those models are going to continue to change as we talk about those next. But Guy, what are your pros and cons? I know you do work with just about every model possible. What are your thoughts from the expert?
Well, I think the first of all is what you said. Which one are they going to do? And even if PSGs were somehow better, which I personally don't believe, and I don't think the data supports that they are, people aren't going to go do them. So it's that's why we're where we are with HSTs. Most medical insurances now are going towards HSTs. They want you to do that first. Now, if you have someone at high risk, they're sleepy, you've got all these symptoms, you give them an HST and it doesn't show anything, then there's something going on. Let's get them to a sleep specialist. Let's get a PSG. The HSTs really do one thing really well. They look for airway problems. There's 70 other sleep disorders out there, I believe 69 or 70. And so that's where then you go to the PSG. You don't do the more invasive test to begin with when we have a test that's looking for the specific problem that we're looking for. And I want to say this, I want to be cautious about this because dentists like exactness. Testing in general is not 100% accurate because we sleep differently every night. The equipment works, but we sleep different. When you strap stuff on, it makes you not sleep as well. And there's per night variances. And I think the ability to do more than one night at home is a huge, I know you can do that at times depending on their insurance. It's 2 nights of data. Well, I'd rather have 2 nights of data from a home test or 1 night of data in a room with all this stuff on me, hooking up. And I think what you said, I want to explain, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I think it's important. I think people, they commonly get this wrong. When I ask, if you don't sleep well, everybody agrees you go to the sleep lab, you got all this stuff on you. There's a weird guy down the hall watching me go to sleep all night and on the monitor, you're just not going to sleep as well. No one is. Does that make you have more or less apnea if you don't sleep as well? And a lot of people think it gives you more apnea. And that's not true. It's maybe counterintuitive, but if you don't sleep well, you don't get to the deeper stages of sleep where the apnea occurs, and so it underestimates the apnea if you don't sleep well. And that's just really common in the sleep lab. So overall, I'm a big proponent of HSTs. I think the cost, convenience, the fact that patients will do it, and the fact that we have a more normal night's sleep trump any of the other things if we're looking for airway problems. If we're looking for other problems, BSGs are absolutely more indicated, but we're talking here about airway apneic problems. So you asked my opinion. I probably gave more than I was supposed to. Oh, I can't hear you.
Excuse me.
No, there you go.
I'm fixed, but I would say that's why I stopped by that area, because we want to ask the expert, right?
Thank you.
We all deal with patients and clients in different ways. It's funny though, Guy, I do have plenty of clients who will call into our clinical department and say, well, I don't understand. How come they don't have apnea? They're like mad they don't have apnea. Or the other way around. Well, why are they severe? It was here. It's like we're trying to fit them in this box of mild to moderate. And I think we got to be really careful of that. But I love what you said, because I think you're right on point. If I'm not getting into my deeper stages of sleep, how am I going to measure that? Because I'm getting up, I'm waking up. But also, for me, when I'm in my deeper stages of sleep, I know that's when I have more of my apneic events, and I snore like a freight train. So at any rate, moving on to HST or HSAT. A lot of cool stuff coming out, friends. People always ask, what is, my recommendation with regards to what to buy or what to use. These are some of my favorites. I'll tell you right now, I think for, at least in our perspective, we definitely, in the dental space, we need to decipher between central and obstructive apneas. And if your device can't do that, then find something else right away. From there, it also needs to be super affordable for the patient and easy for them to use. So if you buy a device and it costs a little bit more money and you put that onto the patient, that can be challenging. I had a conversation today with some great folks, and I'll tell you what I'm hearing a lot of people do, and I'm not telling you to do this, but if you offer, administer, or refer to a local lab or someone like us, they said, well, have you ever considered, say, allowing the doctor to pay for this for the patient? I said, whoa. Well, we have to be really careful in that space when it comes to PPO insurances and any other medical carriers. But why not have the conversation with the patient to say, look, you're paying X amount of money for this sleep test, you got to do it. And if you can't close like Guy, or if you can't close like a Mark Murphy who talks about this day in and day out, or you can't build that urgency like a Tucker, well, why not offer them and say, hey, you know what, it's going to cost you $285 or potentially a little bit less. But if you move forward with oral appliance therapy, I'll help you with a courtesy promotion on your oral appliance should you move forward. And so just a thought there. Sorry for the side note, but it came up today, and I think it's a great idea. But let's get back to home sleep testing. So again, 20, 30, 50 devices out there. I love, because I have a lot of experience with the Resmed Apnea Link Air. I will tell you all out there right now, full transparency, over the last 3 years doing thousands of studies, we've had less than 3% failure with that device. If you want to take a step up, the Knox is a phenomenal device. We've had some excellent conversations with those folks and could see some things happen down the road. I have a lot of respect for the Medabite Junior that my friend Aaron Elliott absolutely loves. Guy, I know you have a couple of watch pats or have had.
Man, I've got a whole room full of sleep.
How many do you have?
I think about 10 different ones are of different kinds. But, I think the bottom line is they all work and they have pros and cons. And I think you're going to go into the methods of doing this. And they're getting better. They're getting less expensive. The technology's improving. They're getting more ease of use. And it's an exciting time for sleep testing. I think back to my first encounter almost 20 years ago with John Rimmers and my Rimmers recorder, which is, the size of an old VCR almost, that we used to use and had it plugged in the wall. We've come a long way. So.
Well, I'm personally excited to hear a little bit more about this WatchPat 1. Thank you, Joel, for sending this over to me. Can't wait to have a conversation with you to learn more about it, and we'll get there. But, bottom line is, we do know that portable monitors, however you want to call them, may be used as an alternative to PSG for the diagnosis of patients with high pretest probability of moderate OSA. Now, that's kind of been changed over the years. This is in 2017 or 2007. But if you go back to what Guy was saying, this is also a challenge too. And respectfully, this is why we see a lot of the labs, for example, the biggest lab in Southern California is no longer here, because most of these carriers want to see a home sleep test done before they go out and spend all the time, money, and energy on a polysomnograph. And again, going back to what I will share with you that I'm going to speak on at in ADSM, you got to think about, and it's one of my favorite books. I think every dental practice should read it. It's called What Customers Crave. I will be sharing that at the lecture that I'm grateful to be a part of, but we've got to give the patient number one option so they have a decision to make for themselves. We need something easy, efficient, and affordable. And again, you're still getting raw data that's going to be diagnosed by a board certified sleep physician. And so as much as some of us want to love or not love the AHI, this is what we're using to really determine what the level of the patient's apnea is and where they're scored. And in fact, our team started encouraging people to use things like level 1, level 2, level 3, or stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3. We're not trying to change it. That's none of our business. But when you're having a communication and sitting down to engage with the patient, if you tell someone they have mild anything, do they do anything about it? No.
Not usually.
So I think it's important to really have that conversation. But regardless of whether I'm doing a PSG or HST, we're all looking at the same thing. And I believe both Guy and I agree on this, and many of you guys will too. No matter what you do, have a multidisciplinary approach. Same thing I'm trying to do with my bride. Share the risk and liability of the other comorbidities that we're not treating with oral appliance therapy or any kind of oral surgical procedure. And think about that. And, I heard this years ago. I believe it was from Ken Burley, who said, look, if your patient is diagnosed with anything from UARS all the way up to severe, share that risk and liability with their primary care physician. If they have not had a physical in the last year, make sure they get back and get it done. And so I do love that with our DS3 clients. They're overly communicating with all the different tools they have in the software to create letters, send those off, and continue on from there. So, Guy, do you have any insight in 30 seconds or so due to time on maybe a pro, or are there any cons that you see to HST?
First, I will mention there's a lot of questions coming in, and we're going to get to them. So don't go anywhere. We'll get to them at the end because we want to run on time. That's what I was looking at on my screen up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 30 seconds or less. The pros are they're less expensive, better night's sleep, more convenient, and the patients will actually do it. Cons are they don't, we don't look at certain things that may be more indicative of other sleep disorders other than sleep apnea. But I don't have a ton of cons for HSTs when looking for airway problems. I just think it's the way to go, and it's the way it is going. And it's not just my opinion; it's the industry's opinion as well as the leaders of the sleep world's opinion. So that was about a minute, maybe. Sorry.
That was I think 39 seconds. For those of you guys who didn't get to hang out with Guy and I had way too many slides, and I tend to do that and cut things down. So let's talk about the 3 ways to get the test done, okay? And I think they're all great. I think they have their pros and cons. Number 1, collaborate with a local physician or a local lab. Great idea. Make it happen. Share the risk and liability of those other things you aren't getting done with a home sleep test per se that you're hand delivering or ordering. And I think this is a big deal. People always ask me, how do I build this relationship with local physicians? And, a lot of folks are going out and pounding the pavement to build a relationship with them first, but they have no experience with oral appliance therapy. They have no proof of efficacy with any appliances that they've provided. And, I always encourage people to take your time, start screening inside your practice, get that done, and refer out all your severe patients to the one or two potential sleep physicians if you have any in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, it's about reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can share the love and the revenue with those folks, that's when they start to open the door, and it's not a 30-second, I'm going to drop off bagels and see you later. It's why don't we meet for lunch and set up a protocol and a workflow.
Can I add something here? Because there's a question by Michael Bannon about this.
Yeah.
What do you do in the States? We can get into details on the legalities after we're the 9 o'clock hour here in Florida. But this is something you can do anywhere. So that this answers your question, Michael. If you work with local physicians, anybody can do that. And one thing I want to mention is it doesn't have to be a sleep lab. You call up the primary care. You explain to them, hey, the patient's at risk. Work with me on getting them sleep tested. How can I help you get sleep tested? And they say, well, we don't know how to do it. Well, let me introduce you to sleeptest.com. They can help you facilitate this as well if they're not even in tune to doing it. This will build your dental sleep practice because it forces you to go out and say hi to physicians. And some of those primary cares will be thankful and will get it and will start referring you patients. And some of them won't. Okay. But it's just like dating. I got told no a few times in my life, but I happily married and someone eventually said yes. So a beautiful wife is downstairs, hopefully hearing this. So go ahead.
Well, I hope she is too. Let me put something out there too, everybody. For those of the folks who have spent the time, the energy, and effort to build a relationship and a partnership with us at sleeptest.com, there's been at least, 15, maybe 20 physicians that have been introduced to us by our dental client. And what we've done is just give that physician our service for no fee up front. And so together, if you are the one, again, you may remember this from before, but we simply want to be the guide and you be the hero. So you go into that physician's practice and say, okay, you don't have an avenue? Well, I can help you there too. Let them screen and test their patients and send you all the mild to moderate ones. And so anybody on this call can connect. I'll have my contact information, but can they connect your physicians with me? We'll create sort of a triangular partnership. It will be no cost to them, and at least you have that if you want that in your territory. So open opportunity for anybody here. All right, part number 2, purchase your own device. Again, ton of great devices out there. I shared my favorites from before. What are there, 20, 30, 50, there are more coming. And I would tell everybody, there's no one perfect device. They all have something we really want, but then potentially lack something else we might like to have. And so just do your homework on that and think about which one's going to be convenient for your patient, but also, of course, determine between obstructive and central apneas, and then think about everything else after that. Just my opinion. But I do encourage our docs, all of them, even if you use our service. Sure, I'd love all your business, but I think there's a great time and place to use your sleep physician, whether that be sleeptest.com or your local lab, as the blessing on the front end and the blessing on the back end. But if you have your own device to hand deliver to those patients during titration, whether it happens to be a pulse oximeter or your own home sleep test device, I think it's fantastic. So any thoughts on that, Guy? I know you've got a couple.
Well, yeah, first of all, there's questions coming in, which ones are better. We'll be happy, type consult. Someone will answer your questions. We record these and they live on YouTube forever, so I hate to be too specific on a broadcast, but we'll be happy to go over these with you. We're aware of all the sleep test, type in consult. One of our team members will get with you, talk to you about the specific devices. I think, Ryan, you're talking about the 3 paths. You have to have all 3 eventually. You're going to need a way to test them in your own office. There's times where that convenience Trump's using sleeptest.com service to patients in a hurry, maybe for titrations, maybe insurance barriers, maybe just this person's so on the fence, if we don't give it to them now, they're going to change their mind. We've got to work with physicians in certain states and for certain insurance policies. And then having the third option, man, one thing I say to everyone that comes to our lectures, I sound like I'm preaching to my 13-year-old here. You don't know how good you've got it. You have these 3 wonderful options in addition to PSGs. And we only had PSGs 12, 13 years ago. So with sleeptest.com, I mean, you don't have to buy anything. You have a service that you can use. So go ahead. I'm sorry I took a little of your thunder there.
Yeah, go ahead. It's better when you say it than me. This part that makes me more embarrassed. But no, this is the third option, right? And there are other entities out there that do this. So we're not the only option for this scenario. I want to be very clear about that. There are pros and cons to each of us, and if anybody wants to talk about it, but if I could just briefly overview this, it's simple. If you're using DS3, you click a button to order the study. All we need is about 7 minutes on the phone with your patient to talk about their deductible, their coinsurance, their out-of-pocket portion, and how to wear the device. And the coolest thing that we did last year, or this year, you can schedule that time on our calendar.
I love that.
So that way we're not chasing your patients like a telemarketer. So it makes everybody's lives more convenient. 2-day ship time via USPS, priority mailed straight to the patient's home. 2-night home sleep test, which I hope we get to here in a moment, because we believe that the research says apnea, including mine, could be different on one night versus the next. And then our turnaround is typically 2 to 3 days. We say 2 to 4 to give ourselves a window so we don't overpromise and underdeliver. And we have that diagnosis and the full letter of medical necessity right back inside your DS3 software. The other thing I would say that's really nice about this, thanks to Guy for allowing our entity to do it, our software sends automated email notifications every step of the way. So you and your patient are in the loop all the way through the process, especially what I find was the biggest challenge in this space and working a bit in the lab space was that you never know after you fax off the order whether or not the patients move forward until you have them back for your next hygiene visit. And so at real time from our team, you'll know exactly who declined testing, why they declined. And guess what? We want to spend time with you on those from an account management perspective to look at your trends. And it's been a great partnership with DS3. We go through that every month and we look at the trends that are taking place. Do we need more help screening? Do we need more help with consultation to get patients in therapy? And their team, along with our team, are all working with those practices to make sure we take those things on. So at any rate, I don't like to keep going on a commercial here, but if anybody is interested, happy to do a personal one-on-one webinar, phone call, you name it. For DS3 members, we give you more than 50% off, and it's a one-time enrollment. You pay nothing else after you join us, but that comes with a lot. It comes with some trainings. We test you for free, discounted studies for the team, and we're in it with full account management because I'll tell you what, from a partnership perspective, it's not about you faxing that order and hoping something happens. We're going to be in your business. Right. We're going to know what's going on. And leading into that, I think is a big piece that a lot of, go Guy.
Well, what I was going to say, there are other companies that do this, but I don't know of any other companies that do that. I mean, you can use their service. Here's our service, but you all go above and beyond when someone joins up with you. Have meetings with the team, make sure everybody understands the service. You test the doctor, discount for the staff, get everybody on board. So it's I mean, for what you all charge for that, it's worth way more than that just in the engagement and education and the getting the team on board for testing. And like I say, I don't know of anybody else that does that. I mean, and I don't get anything out of this. We work with other companies, but we really plug in directly with sleeptest.com because our members are very happy with your service. And I love that collaboration where each month we get the reports and we look at which one of our members are ordering tests and are not going through as well. And then you all work with them. We work with them to talk to them about what they're saying to their patients to get these streamlined. So I know you won't toot your own horn, but I will for you. Your company does a great job at the initial aspects of this and getting everyone on board, and then continued customer service. We have nothing but high marks for you. So, And then this 2-night testing, I think I already mentioned, is important. I think you're going to talk about.
Yeah, just briefly, I think that's part of what we're doing. And I think anybody who's working with a local lab, working with a local physician, buying and administering your own devices, or working with a third party, I think it's important. I really don't believe just one night is enough. I can tell you why, because thinking about failure rates and when people bomb on the first night versus the second night, they're all over the board.
Right.
And a lot of people have questions after the first night. They want to re-engage with our team and ask, oh, I didn't do this. Was this on? And so our team's there to support them. But overall, I think it really benefits everybody, because what we're looking for is positive patient experience.
Right.
And again, that goes right back to what customers crave. I know you guys use that the terminology experience. Friends, it's no longer customer service, no longer customer support. It's the customer experience. What do they feel when they walk in your dental office? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? And then how are they treated all the way through the process? And that's the same thing we have to do, or any partner that you partner with, whether you're buying a CBCT or you're working with Invisalign versus ClearCorrect. Doesn't matter. You have to have that partnership perspective.
Right.
And I will hammer home the titration piece.
Right.
I got to tell you, this concerns me, Guy. I can't tell you how few patients go through testing. They're diagnosed. Now, we don't always know how many people have moved forward with therapy from a data perspective, but our senior account managers and our sleep medicine coaches are on the phone with these practices and knowing that they have gotten these patients into therapy, but they think they're fine. I'm waking up early. I'm going to the gym at 6 a.m. My wife loves me again. And what if all that's a placebo effect?
Yeah, or if they went from really bad to better and they think they're fine. I had a radio
Great point.
that was going down into the 60s desaturations. AHI of 70. He looked different. Dark circles gone. He looked like a new man. But he was, I don't need the follow-up test. I don't need the follow-up test. I'm like, we can go more forward. We can do more. Let's see where we are. I don't need it. I finally got him to do it. Still had an AHI of 35 going down into the 70s.
Wow.
But it was so much better compared to where he was that he thought he was fine. And then we eventually got him down into the teens in his AHI and in the high 80s, which was a huge success for him. So you've got to do these follow-up tests. And I think you even give a discount, don't you, to the members to remind. Hope I'm not advertising something you don't do for everyone. I know you do for us. to encourage
No, we do.
us. Okay.
Yeah. So we learned about a year and a half ago, Guy, that
Well, if not, you're going to
number one, we want to help. Yeah. No. Yeah. If not, no, we learned a lot about a year ago. And again, if we've got a lot of smart people working for us. I can't take all the credit, but we really try to take psychology and human behavior, the patients that you refer to us.
Right.
And I sit in and I hear the scheduling calls all day long. You should hear what some of your patients say to our team. I never wanted to do this. I don't know what you're talking about. Never heard about a cost. But when we get down to the titration part, we really want to help you help these patients.
Right.
And so we took $100 off of that. The most any patient would pay for a titration study is $185. And for those of you guys who are clients, forgive us for blowing you up at the end of the year, but you got to get them in before the end of the year, wherever you're doing it, to help them with their out-of-pocket portion.
Right.
Just like I sadly get to have rotator cuff surgery on Friday.
Right.
So forgive me, those who will see me over the next month or so with a RoboCop arm.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you're doing in medicine or dentistry. We want to have that sort of, okay, I've done well. I'm protecting my license. I'm doing what's best for optimal care. But, the kicker is going back to all you folks who want to work with local physicians, without the proof when they've never heard anything about oral appliance therapy, but you go in and share a story, they don't care. They want to see data, and they want to see good data.
Right.
With regards to your therapy that you're talking about. And I'll give Guy kudos to this slide. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, so we can talk a little bit about pulse oximetry before we're too late here. But perfect example, are you wearing your device? Let's have some detailed conversation, empathize with the patient, challenge them though. And okay, yes, I'm wearing my appliance, but is it working? No, let's come back around, follow up with tests when we're ready. But in the middle of all that, I think it's important to consider the role of pulse oximetry here.
Yeah, I want to make one statement that Mark Murphy, thank you for putting that in. I think he's going to be off. Thanks for attending too, Mark. Is that we want to make sure that when we're talking about this 2-night follow-up test, we talk about that at the consultation. Mark put that in, and it's extremely important. So at the consultation, hey, you're going to do a follow-up test with sleeptest.com. You're not going to pay us for that. You're going to pay them for that. And I think that's one thing I want to mention, that you went through the 3 options, but one of the real big advantages to using your service is it combines the convenience of having like your own unit there, but it gives the perception that I'm not profiting from that, because I'm not. And so the patients, I think, are a little bit more open to it. They're like, I'm not extracting money personally out of them. And so I let them know at the consult that, hey, you're going to follow up, and sleeptest.com is going to do this afterwards as well. And as long as you set the perception at the consultation, it's $185. They know that that's part of their financial responsibility to someone outside of your dental office. It's no problem. So I think that was a good point. I want to make that clear. So go ahead with the pulse oximetry. Sorry to jump in on that.
Hey, if we go over, I'm not gonna. You know who I'm gonna blame. As long as nobody on your team throws anything at me. But you're right. And I honestly, I've never looked at it that way, Guy. I've had other people say other things where, who am I paying? What is the company? But I think you're right. Number one, you're not paying per test as the doctor, referring clinician. You're not paying for disposables. You're not paying for the diagnosis and interpretation. But using an outside source, I could see how that absolutely brings value, because I don't think that you're making money off of me, which unfortunately the dental patient thinks that a lot about their dentist, but doesn't think that about their physician.
Right.
Which is just crazy. So pulse oximetry. We've got a few minutes left, folks. Hang out with us. Might be a few minutes over, but
we'll get to your questions.
But we'll move quick.
Yes.
And I have a full pass. I can stay as long as you want.
Me too.
So pulse oximetry, okay, non-invasive way to measure oxygen saturation, and we're doing that from the arterial blood, right? And I think the fact that it's something that's easy, it's affordable for you all. I personally like the known-in device. I like the contact CMF device, and I'm going to have Guy share a little bit about what he likes. But this is also being encouraged by the AADSM to manage mandibular advancement appliances and how we're bringing the patient forward. Yes, okay, we know it's not recommended for definite diagnosis of OSA, but we can do some screening with this. I don't know if we're going to have time to get into that, Guy, but I think where you like to hang out on this is those in-between phases.
Right.
I would never ask a referring dentist for their business for all of those. I would think it's a pain in the butt as a patient. But use your upfront board-certified sleep physician, your own model, and use them on the back end. But in the meantime, use this to gain some objective data to determine where the patient's at. And Guy, you shared a really good example with me earlier. Do you mind sharing that with the group?
Yeah. So first of all, we're talking about high-resolution pulse oximeters. They've come a long way in the last few years. So if you're going to get one, get the high-resolution pulse oximeter. Nonan's a good brand. We've used that in the past. I do like the SleepSat now for several reasons. Cost-wise, it's more economical, but I really love how they analyze the data. I know the owners of the company, and I've talked to. They're really into analyzing this data to make it so that you can really, from a pulse oximeter, tell a lot of information. And so we could spend the whole hour talking about what these graphs all mean down here. But the good news is you don't have to understand it completely. Green's good, red's bad. Okay. And so what we do, go back for just a second. If you look at those, you'll have 4 areas you can look at. And here's where these things shine. You can do 4 nights with this very readily. It costs nothing to do it other than the purchase price. And so what we do for our patients is we let them know we're going to find the best position for your device. And then once we verify the best position, we need you to go back to sleeptest.com to see how well we're doing at that best position, what that means from your apnea load. Okay, and so how do we do that? We go ahead, we can rapidly titrate these patients. Once their symptoms are better, we can have them move to 3 or 4 different spots over a 3 or 4 night test. And at different spots, we can have them rapidly advance and maybe do one night without it if we haven't already done that. And then from that data, we can usually tell really where the best spot for the device. We have them slowly advance into that spot. Once they're there, then they go back to either the primary care, sleeptest.com. We have that final bookend scored test that keeps us in compliance. And I think then those tests look good and we look like champions to our physicians because we dialed the spot in ahead of time. So that's how those two, I think, really work well. We can talk about screening in a moment if someone, I think there was a question about that, so I'll talk about that after 9 if you want to get through anything else on that. Or well, that's almost to the end anyway, right? Anything more on the oximetry for you? I think you're muted still. Ryan, you're muted.
Yep. I really like the bookend scenario. And here's the deal. When you do have that objective data, you minimize the placebo effect.
Right.
And so we're not just taking subjective data from the patient to say, oh, I feel great.
Right.
So at any rate, great point, Guy. Thank you for pointing out the mute as well. But tell us a little bit more about what you guys offer at 4 Pillars.
Yeah, we're going to get to all these questions.
With the 4 pillars.
With the 4 pillars. We call it the 4 pillars of dental sleep. If you want to be successful at dental sleep, you need a system, you need systems rather, and team members who are responsible to screen your patients, identify who's at risk, systems and team members to help facilitate testing. You need a way to treat the patients, and then you need a way to get paid for it. Now, it sounds pretty simple at a high level, but if you're not doing enough dental sleep in your practice, there's something missing there. And then what does our company do? Well, we help with the 4 pillars. We help through education. We have a whole team of team members that help you with educating, answering your questions. We have online study clubs for just our members where we just talk and we open up the mics and you can talk as much as you want in those because they're just for our members. We have online educational modules we put all our team members, all of our DS3 members through. They're available for coaching, for in-person phone calls. We review the modules. We have a cloud-based software that makes it all efficient, plugs into home sleep testing with sleeptest.com, and then we're there for support 5 days a week. You have questions, you let us know. So again, when I had someone viewing the office today, it was like, wow, all these people, what do they do? Well, they're here to help dentists succeed at dental sleep. So if you want to know more about what we do, type in consult. And even 2 reasons you might want to type that in. One is if you want to know more about what we do, we're not a high pressure sales team. They're going to just give you a tutorial of what we do. But even more importantly, if you have a challenge that we don't get to tonight, go ahead and use us. Type consult, get someone on the phone, ask what you want, billing, which device to use, TMJ problems. You'll get someone on the phone that can answer your questions, and we can show you our value at the time. Here's how you get a hold of us. I know you saw our meetings. As you know, you want to type course if you want $300 off for that meeting. Any of the meetings that you saw on there. Here's how you get a hold of us. And I think, Ryan, you have some closing slides, and this information will come up again in just a second, right?
Yep. 1 more minute, friends. That's all I'm asking of you.
Okay.
This is what I want to think about for a second, or what I want you to think about is how will you act on what you're learning tonight? And I say that to every CE attendee group I see, because as dentists in this space, you all go to more CE than anybody in the world. And I love that about working in the dental community. You are my favorite clinician doctor to work with. And there's plenty that Guy and his team at DS3 can teach you. There's plenty that you're going to learn at the NADSM. But all that learning and all that CE, whatever you do, the one thing we cannot teach you to do is have the desire to implement well. Hands down. So we as a team, we can teach you everything, but in order to take that next step, it takes the desire. And then from there, you have to implement and act on a plan. So I challenge you guys to think about that. And I welcome anybody, and I know Guy and his team does this, but my love is, creating a strategy, creating a plan, and making things happen. And it's hard to do when you're a dentist all day long. I know it. So just final thoughts, and thank you to my friend Aaron Elliott for sharing this quote a while back. Ignorance is the worst sleep disorder of them all.
That's good.
And at the end of the day, we're all here, like Guy said it 2 or 3 times, we're on a mission. The key word in this second quote here, I'm a quote geek, forgive me, but the key word here is be. be the change that you want to see in the world, whether it's in your dental practice, with dental sleep, with your family members, a specific relationship. I don't care. But you have the desire, and then you act on what it takes to be. And at the end of the day, you will get to the next level because you've got all these great people to help you. So, Guy, thank you very much for having me tonight. Appreciate you letting me stay in 5 minutes long. And I can stay all night to take questions.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on here, Ryan. That was fantastic. I learned something as usual. I'm going to scroll through these questions. I think we got to a lot of them. I'm still start at the beginning. So if I miss yours somehow and you want to type it back in, but I know Andrea asked quite a few questions here. I think a lot of those were implementation about billing that if you want, one of our billing, Lisa, or one of the team from the billing department will get on and answer those questions for you. There was a question about does a doctor have to prescribe the sleep study? I think we addressed that, but let me just address that because that's kind of the can of worms that maybe we should, after hours here, go ahead and talk about. There's two aspects to that question. Can a dentist prescribe a sleep test? One of them is, will insurances pay for that, and will the insurance ultimately pay for a sleep device that the dentist prescribed the test for? Well, there's guidelines on that. We could talk about that for all hours of the night. At a high level, Medicare says we can't do that. So if you're wanting insurance to pay for this, and it's a Medicare patient or Medicare supplement plans and some other insurance companies, then you can't do that. But if it's not Medicare for the most part, and you all know, I think if we order the test that, hey, you may not get paid down the road if this test has certain insurances. You all identify that along the way, many of oftentimes, Brian?
You're asking me. I thought you were asking them.
No. So let's say someone orders
with regards.
If it's a Medicare patient and they go and somehow they didn't get the memo, you would call them up and go, "Hey, that's a Medicare patient." Now, if the patient can pay,
that is correct.
They can pay for the test.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be able to do a device and get Medicare to pay you back for it.
Correct, in the Medicare model.
Right.
If you are not a Medicare DME provider, you can use an ABN form when treating them with oral appliance therapy, as can we.
Right.
So we're treating them as a private cash patient, but otherwise, I encourage folks to get enrolled as a DME provider.
Right.
I think it's a great thing to do. You're going to help more people.
Right.
Unfortunately, there just are more strict rules. When it comes to PPO, when it comes to other models, it's not an issue.
Right. And so that's the insurance aspect of it. And our team, Ryan's team, will help you understand which patients, from an insurance point of view, there's some restrictions about whether the dentist can order the test or not if you ultimately want to get paid. It's not illegal. You just won't get reimbursed if you want to do the device if you don't do it in the proper sequence. And that's insurance. If you want to learn more about insurance, Lisa from our company, 4-Pillar Billing, teaches a full-day course. We did one recently. It was booming success. She's going to be teaching more of those. So that's a whole day subject is my point. So we will help you with that. Now, from a legal point of view, your state dental board determines what you can and can't do as a dentist. And until 2007, no one could order a home sleep test in the United States because it wasn't considered a first line. It wasn't considered a diagnostic treatment that was covered by insurance, and the AASM didn't recommend it. So it wasn't done in our country unless it was fee for service. So in most states, if you call your dental board and say, I'm a dentist, I'd like to order a sleep test, they're going to tell you, well, we don't have anything that says you can or can't. And I encourage you as dentists, if you feel that that's something you should be able to do, because you're not making a diagnosis. We're just ordering the test. Ryan's team, the physicians, are making the diagnosis. If you buy your own equipment, you're going to work with your local physicians or physicians the company set you up with. We're not talking about dentists diagnosing. We're talking about dentists ordering the test. And in most states, it's up to you, the dentist, whether you feel that you're trained adequately to do that. And I think if you go through our training, Ryan's training, we feel confident. I do it all the time here in Florida, and currently there's not a standard one way or another. It has come up in a few states. Texas is one of them where Rich lives. They went down and came back from that meeting with an opinion. They opined that dentists can do it. My understanding is Colorado's a state that they came away from the meeting saying that you could. I've heard New Jersey is one that unfortunately the dentist in that state said dentists can't. So there's some rules, but for the most part throughout the country, it's up to you as the dentist and your clinical judgment. Do you want to? And I know it's a little bit of a can of worms, and I don't want that to hurt anybody from doing this. But we we feel dentists should be able to do this. And the reason I think it's worth discussing, if it comes up in your state, contact us, contact Ryan. We'll be happy to send a letter about why, if you choose to not do it that way, the ultimate end result is access to care issues, and patients aren't going to get tested, and there's going to be more people suffocating at night because of that. Anything else you want to add? I know that was a lot, but that was a can of worms that I went ahead.
Well, I'll just say this, because I'll just say this, guys. It's something we have to study rigorously and persistently. So we're on top of it. We look at state by state. I've been studying that with folks that you probably know, but also just recently reached out to probably the number one healthcare attorney in the sleep space without naming names.
Okay.
Not the one you're thinking of, but somebody else. And they love what we're all about, and they're helping us look at each state one by one, making sure we're staying up to, like what you said, there's a difference between, I didn't share these slides because I didn't want to go down this route, but if anybody wants to have a one-on-one conversation with me, that direct phone number that you see there goes right to my cell phone. I welcome these calls. I have a lot of literature and data on what's the difference between a statute and opinion.
Right.
And so there's only one state in the U.S. where it is statute, and that's in Georgia,
Okay.
where a dentist cannot order a sleep test. I disagree with it. I think it's wild. But at the same time, there are opinions in states like New Jersey, you mentioned, Guy, and a few others where things are brewing. I can tell you right now, my whole life is built into this thing, and I'd love to enjoy that rest of my life with my children. So we stay very, very on top of these things because we care about you as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know you're an attorney. I believe in that individual is very sharp and very understanding. So don't let that scare you. We do this all the time. It's something that everyone, we have dentists in all 50 states, and this sleep testing hurdle has gotten so much less than what it was 10, 12 years ago. Through companies like sleeptest.com, it becomes so much easier. The other question that came up, and I think it's really the last one, and then if anybody has any more, feel free to type them in, is about pediatrics. And, what is the earliest age that someone should be tested? And I have an opinion on that, but I'm interested. Do you have an opinion, or you want to talk about that, or you want me to grab that one?
I think it's nothing but an opinion.
Yeah.
Love to talk about it. I have 6-year-old twins. I would not be able to get them in a PSG or a home sleep test. So my personal opinion, I would say for now, if we're talking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if they're 1, 2, if they're infants, they're probably going to do something in the hospital, especially when they're born, whatnot. I've seen that happen. But I think anybody who's up to the age of 8, maybe 7, the best way to do this, even if you talk to some of our other friendly vendor partners like Joel Blix, same story. Record your child who is snoring with your cell phone. This is something I had to do with my son. My daughter slept all the way through the night, and the pediatrician, and my wife was, hammering her on it, would not move forward with the referral to the ENT. And so we took a video. I came in with her. We sat down as a family. I'm like, look, I don't have all the answers. I'm not a physician, but this is a problem. And so we ended up having them scoped, and we're taking a look at it. I think around maybe 8, 9, 10, you can start testing with home sleep testing devices. I know you can do that with the Knox. I believe you can also do that with the WatchPat down to a certain level. In fact, we have Knox T3s on hand to do that for children. We are piloting that in a few spaces. It's gone great so far, but we haven't decided to push that full launch yet. In fact, one of my favorite stories was an orthodontist in North Carolina. We had the opportunity to test an 8-year-old Down syndrome child. Wow. And we got positive results, and he was able to help her orthodontically, which was, I'm getting chills right now, which was really cool. So there are options. What do you think, Guy? What are your thoughts on age levels?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be a little smart aleck here, but I think breathing is important at any age. So if we suspect a breathing problem at any age, we should get our children to someone. I love the idea of recording it, and that's first that's occurred to me. Because the challenge is getting someone to do something is really difficult because the knowledge out there for pediatrics is really, really not where it should be. So that's a great idea. It even starts with children and breastfeeding and not being able to do that. So we could go on forever. But I think if you feel your child's not sleeping, they're snoring, they're not breathing well, um, and I know this isn't possible in all areas, but if you can find a pediatric sleep specialist, they usually get it. And so not just an ENT or not just a specialist, a sleep specialist, but not just a pediatrician, but a pediatric sleep specialist. We have one in a group, two of them over in St. Pete. And when we refer people over there, they get it. They see this stuff. They know how bad this is.
Awesome.
That's my recommendation. If instead of, I'm not going to mess around with this. All respects to you and everybody else. I think it's too important. I want to get them to someone who knows that. But if you just get them to a normal pediatrician, an ENT, or they just don't always know enough about sleep as they probably should. And some of them are great, I'm sure. But if you get the pediatric sleep specialist, I've found that most of the people that have sent me emails later on going, yeah, we found a pediatric sleep specialist, had to drive 2 hours, it was worth it. They really understood these challenges better. So that's my recommendation, is get them to a pediatric sleep specialist if you can find one. And then record them. Love
Great
that.
insight.
Love that, because that way you'll get their attention. So unless anybody has any more questions, I see there's still half the people still on here, 50 or so. So thank you for sticking out with us, staying out with us. If you need to get a hold of us, there's our contact, the courses, consults. If you want to sign up for sleeptest.com service, by all means, there's their contact. I don't. You can answer that one. Can you see the questions, Ryan?
I can't, unless I'm just in the wrong spot. What does it say?
That's from your friend Elias. What kind of hair
Oh,
gel?
of course it is. This is Layrite. It's amazing.
Good to see. Glad that you're on here, Elias. Hope you're doing well. I think that's a good spot to end. So before we open up any more cans of worms here, Ryan, I can't thank you enough. I really felt you brought some new things to the table here. I learned some things. Drowsel, is that the name of it? Because I got to go back and look at the slides and go look into this myself. I'm familiar. Yep, I haven't worked with them. Just some different insight you brought. Sure, we'll do this again. I look forward to seeing you at the North American Dental Sleep Medicine Symposium, again, February 14th and 15th here in the west coast of Florida. I don't know where you live, but it's a good odds it'll be nicer here in February. So we hope to see you. Thanks again, and I'll see you then. Anything else, Ryan, you want to say before I hit the stop button here?
No.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Guy. Thanks, everybody at Dental Sleep Solutions and everybody who's here.
All righty. Bye-bye.